Been a while since I've been called much of anything, but back in the Withy window, folk used to call me Tom Bombadil.
Hey, welcome back to Screencrush. I'm Ryan Airy.
Hey, and I'm Colton Ogburn.
And this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 4. And before we get rolling, I got a disclaimer for you. I've read these books, and I always pronounce these names a certain way in my head. So if I do mispronounce anything, sorry, but unless you speak the original Elvish, we're all pronouncing these words wrong anyways.
And as for me, I don't even know what a book is.
All right, let's break this baby down. This episode took so much from deep Tolkien lore and the original novels, including the Ents, the Barrow-wights.
Hey, and don't forget my main guy, Tom Bombadil.
Yes, and we will get to Tom Bombadil because he is one of the weirdest, most overlooked Tolkien characters who is actually a deep symbolic inclusion for this series. So, the episode begins with Galadriel and Elrond setting off from Lindon. Now, in our first breakdown this season, I talked about how Elrond is playing the role of an audience proxy. He is suspicious of the Rings of Power because, if he weren't, then the audience would be saying, "Hey idiots, Sauron made the ring, so why the hell are you using it?" So throughout the season, I think we'll see Elrond gradually come to terms with the Elven rings being used for good, which will satisfy the audience's skepticism. I loved the epic vistas of this sequence, which really harken back to the epic scenes of the films. Season 1 was filmed entirely in New Zealand, like the original movies, but Season 2 was relocated to the United Kingdom and the Canary Islands, presumably to save on costs. Now, Galadriel's ring, Nenya, gives her the ability to see Sauron's movements and to see the future, just like she could in Fellowship of the Ring.
I know what it is you saw, for it is also in my mind.
Now, after they see the bridges destroyed, this Fellowship of Red Shirts faces two options, the long way round or a treacherous path to the south. And remember, Gandalf faced a similar choice in Fellowship of the Ring.
If the mountain defeats you, will you risk a more dangerous road?
Gandalf took his fellowship south through the mines of Moria, while Elrond also chose a more dangerous path south through the Barrow Downs. Now, just to give you a sense of geography, Lindon, the elven capital, is here, and they are trying to reach Eregion, which is here. The bridge that Sauron destroyed is the shortest path right here. So, since the path was cut off, they have to venture south through these hills called the Barrow Downs.
Right, and in Lord of the Rings, the Barrow Downs were actually part of the region that contained Tom Bombadil's home. When Frodo and the other hobbits were in this region, they were under the Bombadil's protection.
Tom Bombadil. Colton, can you explain Tom Bombadil for us, when you're done with your lunch?
Oh, person, did you just bite into a raw egg?
Yeah, man, Rings of Power always gets me in the mood for second breakfast.
What about second breakfast?
But I don't always have time to cook one breakfast, yet alone two. Oh, wow, it's America's #1 food kit, HelloFresh. They're the sponsor of this video.
Wait, you got a door in there? And you got delivery?
Doug, you don't understand. This changes everything. With HelloFresh handling all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get breakfast and second breakfast on the table in a quick and painless fashion.
Oh, please tell me more.
There are always new flavors to explore with an ever-changing menu of 50 recipes to choose from every week. You just pick your meals and delivery date. It's that simple. And hey, we understand that life gets busy. Sometimes you have journeys that take you away from home. And that's why HelloFresh lets you easily customize your delivery from week to week. Tailor everything to your schedule by adjusting your delivery date or skip a week when you're not able to cook at home.
Oh, wow, I can smell that from out here. What is that?
Oh, this is a spinach and feta egg bite that I just popped into the microwave for 2 to 2.5 minutes. You can choose from a variety of menu options to suit all your needs and tastes, from fit and wholesome to quick and easy, or vegetarian to family friendly. There's something for everyone to enjoy. So with summer in the rearview mirror and busier days ahead, now's the perfect time to save time and money when it comes to your dinner routine. Skip the meal planning and grocery store lines and cut down on food waste with HelloFresh's convenient doorstep delivery and pre-measured ingredients. So for free breakfast for life, go to HelloFresh.com and use the code FREESCREENCRUSH. You'll get one free breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com with code FREESCREENCRUSH. So for all your breakfast, second breakfast, lunch, and dinner needs, visit my link in the description below and use code FREESCREENCRUSH at checkout. Now, back to Rings of Power. So let me explain Tom Bombadil. The character is a Tolkien creation who actually predates the Lord of the Rings books, first appearing in a poem called The Adventures of Tom Bombadil in 1934. He does, however, appear in the novel Fellowship of the Ring, but he is omitted in every adaptation except for the trading card game. He's not 100% necessary to the story, but he adds a level of depth and shading to Middle-earth. In Fellowship, Pippin and Merry are trapped by a tree called Old Man Willow.
Just like the stranger in this episode.
Exactly. In fact, the song that he sings to the tree,
Eat earth, dig deep,
is very similar to the song in Fellowship of the Ring, as in the song when the stranger first sees him.
Sun, stars, moon, and this red and cloudy weather.
Now notice that the first song causes the map to fly off into the wind and land on the tree, which leads the stranger to a branch that may eventually become his staff. Bombadil seems to orchestrate these events by accident, or they seem like acts of nature. In the book Fellowship of the Ring, after Bombadil frees Merry and Pippin, the hobbits spend 2 nights at his home, after they leave the Shire but before they get to the Prancing Pony. During this time, Bombadil takes Frodo's ring, puts it on, and nothing happens. This is because the ring has no power over him, and so he has no power over the ring.
Well, then why didn't Tom Bomber whoever take the ring to Mount Doom?
Well, Frodo asked Gandalf the same question, and Gandalf told him that Bombadil would probably misplace the ring because he simply didn't see any value in it.
So what is he? Is he a Valar or like an Istar like Gandalf?
He's just Tom Bombadil. Tolkien even said that Bombadil was intended to be an enigma. Not every fact of a universe needs to be explained. Tom Bombadil is just very ancient old magic that transcends explanation. Some people think he is a cipher for Tolkien himself, an all-powerful creation that simply allows story events to happen. In any case, there are lots of Tom Bombadil Easter eggs pulled straight from the text. The song he sings to free the stranger,
down west sinks the sun, soon you will be groping,
is the same one he sings after freeing Merry and Pippin from Old Man Willow.
When the night shall fall,
then the door will open.
Also notice this sound effect when he tosses the map.
Newcomers.
It's very cartoony because Tom Bombadil is meant to be a cartoon-like fairy tale character. He also sings a duet with his wife, Goldberry.
Don't be bashful now, Goldberry.
when the night shall fall.
Who also appears in Fellowship of the Ring, and the original poem as the River Woman's daughter. And in Fellowship, he also calls himself the eldest, like in the episode. And this line is also lifted directly from the book.
Tom was there before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn.
Now, there are a few key differences. The tree is Old Man Ironwood, not Old Man Willow. But what I think is very interesting is why they chose to place him in this story. Tom makes an appointment to say that he does not normally reside in Rhûn. He normally resides in the Old Forest. So he's here for a specific reason.
To train Gandalf.
No, he actually makes a point to say that the stranger cannot be trained to use magic. Instead, he says,
Great deeds are left to the hands they were placed in.
Tom Bombadil does what he does because it's in his nature to do so. And he's trying to teach the stranger the same lesson. He has to simply be who he is so he can accomplish what is meant to be. And Tom Bombadil is the perfect person for this message because he is himself like a force of nature, indifference to evil or good. He even says,
And I shall gather lilies while yet they grow.
A variation of the opening line of To the Virgins to the Make Much of Time. Gather rosebuds while ye may. A poem which is essentially about making the most of your brief time on Earth. This is all why Bombadil sets the stranger up to face the Dark Wizard and Sauron. It's literally the reason he is on Middle Earth. And by the way, I wanted to show you guys these awesome new shirts we designed for our merch store. There's this parody Nirvana cover with Gollum swimming after the One Ring, and a parody of Abbey Road with these halflings crossing the street. We love designing these shirts for you guys, and shopping at our merch store is the best way to support our channel so that we can keep making videos just like this one. Links are in the description below.
Thanks, Colton. That was awesome. I also want to note that Tom Bombadil talks about how the evil flames of the Dark Wizard and Sauron can combine into one, which of course does happen in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, with Sauron and another Istar turned evil, Saruman. And I just want to say how pitch perfect all of this is, because the stranger is probably young Gandalf, and Gandalf knew Tom Bombadil very well. At the end of Return of the King, he even gives Frodo an update of what old Tom has been up to for the past couple years. The Stranger's storyline is all about showing us how someone like Gandalf could enter the world with all the intention to do good, but there is still a danger of them being tempted to do evil. Now this is a theme that continues on in the Third Age. Saruman was the greatest white wizard, yet he turned evil, and Gandalf and Galadriel knew that they too would be turned evil if they tried to use the One Ring.
I would use this ring from a desire to do good, but through me, it would wield a power too great and terrible to imagine.
And, speaking of the Dark Wizard, he is played by Ciarán Hinds, who also played Mance Rayder in Game of Thrones. Now, meanwhile, Nori and Poppy are just fine, and they discover another part of the Hobbit diaspora, the Stores. You see, there are actually three kinds of hobbits. The Harfoots, who are like the Shire folk that we know from the original movies. There's also the Falahides, who are more adventurous, and the Stores, and these are the hobbits that we meet in this episode. Funny enough, though, in the Third Age, the Stores were known for enjoying water activities like boats and swimming. This could be because they lived in the desert for so long that when they finally made it to the Suzat, they chose to live near as much water as possible. Also, Smeagol, who became Gollum in later years, was a Store, and that is why he and his only friend Deagle were fishing in a river when they found the One Ring. So Nori and Poppy meet Merry-Mac, whose name seems like a nod to Frodo's cousin Merry. Notice how the Stores, unlike the Harfoots, live in a permanent settlement carved into rocks, much like the Pueblo Native Americans in the American Southwest. But even though these people have agriculture, they don't have their own water source. They scavenge the water from the Dark Wizard as well. I just loved all of these tiny details embedded in the culture that aren't really called attention to, but they're just sort of there in the background. It also calls a contrast to the people of Numenor, who had aqueducts running throughout their city to show one civilization that's very advanced and has close ties to water, while the other is scavenging for water but has found a way to carve out a living in the desert. I just loved all these tiny details, and that we get to see the Hobbit origin story.
Yeah, I missed all that. What was that again?
Well, okay, remember Sadak Burrows, the Harfoot sage and leader last season? He had a book that was filled with like Hardfoot history, including the movements of stars, which also included the constellation and rune that the Stranger and Nori are now following. Now, last season, it just seemed like an amazing coincidence that this constellation was in his book, but now we find out that this constellation was in his book because these people came from rune. Like in the last episode, it was revealed that their walking song was actually a way to get through this desert waste.
Piece of stone, light in the tower no longer my home.
You see, Doug, the Harfoots actually came from this desert generations ago, and they were searching for a promised land that they called a Suzat.
Yeah, what's the Suzat?
Well, in the language of Middle-earth, Suzat actually means Shire. So this is showing us that the Harfoots are the ancestors of the hobbits that we know from Lord of the Rings, and that likely, one day, their large wagon wheels will become the round hobbit doors that mark entrances to hobbit homes.
Geez, that is very cool.
Yes, and get this, it was also said that the Stores originally came from the Vales of Anduin. This is the valley east of the Misty Mountains, close to Mirkwood, which is also halfway between Rune and the Shire, which means that eventually the Stores left Rune, ventured west, and then settled in this land. I love all of this world building. But also, these hobbits are funny. They give a sense of levity to this show that otherwise we'd be missing. Like, okay, for instance, you know how in the original movies, like every single film stopped so Sam could give an inspirational monologue?
It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo.
But when Nori starts off on a speech, the Stores cut her off right away.
My friend find his destiny. One the fate of the world may well depend on, yours included.
I said one good reason.
Meanwhile, Galadriel and Elrond are tricked into going into the Barrow Downs. Now, these Barrow Downs also appeared in the book Fellowship of the Ring. Remember how earlier we said that the Barrow Downs were in Tom Bombadil's domain?
Uh-huh.
Well, when Frodo and the others left Tom Bombadil, he taught them a rhyme to sing in case they were in trouble, if, they were still close to his house. And sure enough, the hobbits were attacked by Barrow Wights and they're saved by Tom Bombadil. Now, in the book and in the show, when the Wights appear, they recite this rhyme. Now that rhyme does appear in the movies, but it's recited by Gollum in The Two Towers.
Cold be heart and hand and bone, and cold be travellers far from home.
Now, in the book, the Barrow Downs were originally just graves for men and elves from the First Age, but the Barrow Wights infiltrated these graves and haunted them.
Okay, so why are they in this episode?
Well, I think they're in this episode because this story that they're telling is specifically about Sauron's evil starting to infect all of Middle-earth. We also see this big monster that Arondir fights, the one called Supper, and we also see the orcs that Sauron tricks into marching into Elvish territory to kick off a war between his two enemies, Adar and the elves. Luckily though, Elrond knows the origin story of the Barrow Wight, so he's able to outsmart them by using their own weapons against them, similar to what Sauron is currently doing to the elves, using their skills to create jewelry to undermine their power in the realm. Afterwards though, Galadriel has a vision. She sees Sauron grabbing for his crown, a knife to Elrond's throat, and orcs toppling a white statue, which, I could be wrong here, I believe is in Pelargir, the old Númenórean colony that we've seen in the past couple episodes. Finally, she sees Sauron standing over them, and all of this leads her to believe one thing: the ring Nenya must be kept safe and away from Sauron and Adar. This is why, when she sees Adar's orcs, she gives the ring to Elrond, and this line,
"A legion of orcs have marched into Elvish lands. We are all of us at war,"
seems like a callback to this banger.
Open war is upon you, whether you would risk it or not.
And also, this line,
"Back in line!"
seems like a callback to this.
"Back in the line!"
Now again, these are all really fun Easter eggs and member berries to the movies, but they also show an important lesson from Lord of the Rings, that the darkest moments of history will be repeated if we allow them to pass. Like, think about it. Because Isildur didn't destroy the ring at the beginning of Fellowship, there was another war for the ring centuries later, just as this will not be the last time we hear orcs say "back in line," and it's not the last time we're going to see armies of orcs infiltrate up into Elvish territory in Middle-earth. So Tolkien is issuing a warning against history repeating itself, and I think this could have been informed by his own harrowing experience as a soldier in World War I, a war which led into an even bloodier conflict, World War II. And I also want to shout out the amazing design of this orc, with shoulder pads made from a large spine. The Peter Jackson movies always knew how to design an orc that stood out from the rest. And there's also a cool moment here when the ring is used to heal an elf. Now, this is a small way for the story to show Elrond and the audience that the ring is a tool for good, rather than Galadriel telling him and the audience over and over and over, "Hey, don't worry, you can trust the rings." And how badass was this Galadriel fight? A perfect mix of practical and CGI, with another throwback line to the Jackson movies.
Go back to the shadow!
Go back to the shadow!
This is where I think the show starts to really feel fun. This fight, I love this fight so much. To me, it felt like something you would almost see in an 80s movie. I half expected the score from Willow to start up. And then we have Isildur and Arondir's quest to save Theo and become literal tree huggers. Last episode, Theo was taken by wild men who made a pledge to serve Adar. Now remember, Estrid befriended Isildur in the last episode before burning Adar's mark from her back. Now I still think she did this because she wanted to be free from her involuntary pledge to Adar, but the added bonus is that she was also got to be undetected in Pelargir. She definitely was not sent there as a spy because, let's face it, she had a terrible cover story.
That was my fault. I fell asleep by the fire. I should have put it out, but then I was cold.
Just an awful liar. Isildur gets the local aqueduct working, bringing some of the wonders of Númenor to the locals. Now this is slowly showing us that eventually he will become a leader of men. He was king for more than 2 centuries after all. Now after Arondir forces Estrid to be their guide, they find a swath of destruction that the orcs have burned through the forest. This is also similar to how orcs and the Uruk-hai incurred the wrath of the Ents in the Two Towers. Now guys, I want to get serious for a second. When Isildur was stuck in the bog,
"Lift me up! I'm going down!"
Did that give anyone else like actual heart beating fast, I need therapy flashbacks to this?
Artax, you're sinking! Come on, turn around! You have to now!
Jeez, man, don't share that.
I'm really sorry. So Arondir takes down the monster, Drax style, and then Isildur is almost stomped by an Ent, in a shot that mirrors the final shot from last episode, which of course was an homage to this shot of an orc being trampled in the Two Towers. But this time, Arondir is there to save him. And look, as I theorized last episode, it is an Ent wife.
A what now?
An Ent wife. You see, in the Third Age, Ents basically became an endangered species because they misplaced all of their wives and couldn't have more kids. But here, the wife is called Winterbloom, and she is played by Olivia Williams, you know, from Rushmore.
Has it ever crossed your mind that you're far too young for me?
And her husband is named Snakeroot, played by this guy.
Spectacular! Spectacular!
Now, the forest is not the same one from the Two Towers. This is why the Ents say,
"The spilling sap and burning branch called to us from afar."
And just like Treebeard, these Ents are horrified at what's happened to these trees.
Winterbloom nourished many of those trees from seed and sprout. Many of these trees were my friends, creatures I had known from nut an acorn.
So I thought this entire scene with the Ents was beautiful. We got the big action scene with Galadriel, but then it ends with this quieter moment which shows us what the characters are actually fighting for. This also mirrors the Tom Bombadil scene where he tells the stranger that he is the eldest, and of course the Ents tell us,
"We have tended this forest since before the mountains rose up and divided it."
In other words, this land has existed before good or evil came to its shores. In the original book, Tolkien saw the One Ring as the idea of the machine, the unnatural, the thing that men created to bend nature to their will, while the heroes always exist in harmony with nature and learn to appreciate the simple things like food, songs, and especially pipeweed. And finally, Colton, I bet you $10 that Estrid's fiancé does not last another episode. Tolkien never actually gave a name to Isildur's wife, or really any women in his books, so I'm thinking that she's going to end up being Mrs. Bane.
Well guys, that's all the Easter eggs that we caught, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or add us on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screencrush, I'm Ryan Airy.